Hello, welcome to episode 30 of live.withcode.uk. This week is Safer Internet Day, and the theme this year is how you can trust what you find on the internet and how you can stay safe online. The theme of this week's program is to make a quiz. It will display some ASCII art as a bit of an introduction. It will read that from a text file, and it will load some quiz questions from a CSV file, and then it will keep asking until you get the right answers. So it says, what percentage of young people say being online is a more important part of their life than ever before? We know that the answer is 77 because that's what's read from the file, but if we guess, it should tell us if we're too high or too low. So I'm doing a binary search here. I've gone halfway between 0 and 100. Let's go halfway again. Still too low. 82 too high. If we get the right answer, and it works. And it should work through all of the questions read from the file. So I'm not going to write out all of this. You can put your own introduction in, you can put your own quiz questions in. These are taken from a BBC article, or you can find out more on saferinternet.org.uk. Let's make the program together that loads the questions from a file. So first of all, I want to read everything from this intro.txt file. So to open a file, we use the open built-in function, and then pass the file name in as a parameter, intro.txt. And I'm going to say with open as an object called f, then we can use f to read from, and then because it's indented here, it's automatically going to be closed and all the resources are going to be freed up automatically. And then I'm going to just display the contents of the file. So we've loaded that file, and this looks like useful code that we could reuse. So we'll say def display file or show file or something like that. Indent all of this, so this is now part of that subprogram. Notice when we run it, nothing happens because we've told Python how to display a file, but we've not actually told it which file to display yet. So display file, oops, helps if I spell it correctly. There we go. But it would be nice if we could customize this to reuse it so it would display any file. So I put a parameter in here, and so therefore I need to say which file to display and make sure we don't always display intro.txt, we display whatever is in that, that variable here that we've passed in as a parameter. So once we've made that procedure, we should be able to reuse it with any file to display the contents of whatever file we pass in as that parameter. But we don't want to display the whole of the quiz file because that will give away the answers. We want to read it in line by line, split up each line so that we can get the answer and the question separately, and then keep on asking the question until we get it right. So first of all, we want to display one question. I want to be able to do something like show a question, and I need to say what the answer is, so let's say 50, and what the question is. So what number is half of 100? I'm just going to do this to start off with. I'm going to pass this in as a single parameter. You'll find out why a little bit later. Well, it's basically because we want to read them all in from a file. But at the moment, it doesn't know how to show a question. We're calling a procedure that we haven't yet defined. So let's go and define it. Def show question. And at this point, we just have a single piece of data passed in, one parameter that we can display. And from that list, we need to be able to get the answer and the question. So let's extract that. We'll get the answer equals Q0. Index 0 means get the first item, and question equals Q1 to get the second value in the list, as in index position 1. We can then display that question without giving away the answer. So that's loads better. What we want to do is, instead of just displaying the question, we want to ask the question. So we'll use input, the built-in function input. And if we ask a question, we should listen to the response. So I'm going to call that attempt because I've already got a variable called answer. And then I need to check and see if we've got it right. So if attempt is equal to answer, then say well done, good guess. Otherwise, so elif attempt is greater than answer, we can say too high, try again. Otherwise, if it's not equal and it's not greater, it must be too low. So let's see, what's half of 100? If I get it wrong, let's have a look. I've got the wrong variable name in here. If I get it wrong here, it only gives me one guess, which is pretty much impossible to guess unless we know what the answer is. So I'd like to keep guessing. So let's see, while not correct. Sounds nice and logical, but we've got an error here because it doesn't know if we're correct or not. So let's assume that we're not correct. But this is going to keep on guessing forever, even if we get it correct. And even if we get it correct, it thinks that we've got it wrong. That's because the return value from input is a string, and we're comparing that string 50 with the integer 50, and they're not the same. So we need to convert the string that we get from input to an integer, and now hopefully it thinks we've got it right, but irritatingly it keeps asking. So all we need to do is say if we get it right, correct equals true, and then hopefully it's not going to be correct anymore, so therefore it will stop looping around. So oops, whilst not correct. What number is half of 100? 67? Nope, too high. 50? Yep, we got it and it stopped. That's great. So we've got an individual question working perfectly. What I want to be able to do is load a whole list of all the questions from a file. So for this, let's define a new function that will say read question. In fact, we're going to read all of the questions from a file, so we need to know what the file is called. And we want to return a list of all of those questions. We don't know what questions are just yet, so we'll make an empty list so that we can put them inside that list. Just like we did when we displayed the contents of a file, we're going to open that file. So with that file object as f, we will read it, split it every time we get a new line. So the \n means every time we come across a new line constant, every time we go from one line to the next, we want to split it up and get a list of all of these. And we'll store that in a list called lines. So let's test it for now. Let's just display what lines is. Comment this out and say read questions from, what do we call it, quiz.csv. You can see here we've now got a list of all of the lines separately. That's the first value, the first line. This is the second line, etc. But we haven't yet got the parts of the line separately. The file is a CSV file, a comma separated value. So we need to get the answer and then a comma and then the question. So that's our next challenge. So once we've got all the lines, we can loop through them for line in lines, and we'll split them up. We'll say the answer comes first, then the question equals line.split, and this time we're not splitting when we get a new line constant, we're splitting when we get that comma. And then this will get a list of two values. The first will go into answer, the second will go into question, so that we can then add both of those values to our list of questions. So questions.append, let's make a new list that stores both of them, but we have to be careful. This will be a string, we'll need to convert it to an integer so that we can do the comparisons afterwards. It's looking good, it's better. And then hopefully we return questions. So let's have a look. Let's see, questions equals, and then print questions. So we've now got a two-dimensional list, a list of lists. We've got a list that contains all the questions, and inside that list we've got three individual lists. and those individual lists have a number, an integer, the answer to the question, and a string, which is the question itself. So that's great because we can then iterate through each of them. So for question in our list of questions, we can use our function, sorry, our procedure. It doesn't return a value, it's a procedure. We can use that procedure with the single question that we're interested in, and it should ask us our question. Let's see if it works. So it has, it's asked us a question. Let's guess. 78, too high. 77, spot on. It's moved on to the next question, and it seems to work. It's possible to make it crash if we type in something non-numeric, but we haven't got time to work out how to fix that today. You've got a couple of challenges to work through. Let's have a look. Challenges number 1. You can add your own facts. I can't type your own facts to quiz.csv to make your own quiz. It doesn't have to be Safer Internet Day related. You could replace your own replace intro.txt with your own intro. I used like an ASCII text generator website to do mine. So I'm going to put the link in for that just here. And then finally, you could add a variable to keep track of how many attempts you need. There's all sorts of other ways you could adapt this, but we'll stick with those for now. Remember, you can find links to remote learning activities. You can type out this code as fast as you can. You can access the code. You can work through some K-Pride activities to build up your comprehension of GCSE Python skills. And there's a quiz and a challenge to get some points. So all the very best. Look after yourselves, and I will see you next week for another Python challenge. Bye-bye.